Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on 1965 Wagoneer. Today we're going to be doing some rust repair and some sanding. Now what you're going to want to do is remove the door, and there's going to be 3 bolts on each hinge. We're going to remove one at a time. Now what I'm doing is using Sharpie to see where the original bolts go. This will give us somewhat of a reference point where the bolts will need to go when going back in. Now what I did was I put this in fast forward, and this way you could see what I was doing. I left one bolt in there, and this way I could drop it on the little chair and then still unload this door by myself. Now this is a close-up of the area that we're going to be cutting out. This is why I removed the door. It was on the area closest to the hinges, and it was going to be too hard to weld and make a panel from scratch while it was still on the vehicle itself. Now what we're going to do is cut out a template so we can make a metal patch from the template. What I like to use is cardboard or some very thick paper. This way it holds its shape as you're trying to make your patch. Now once you think you have the cardboard or your thick paper lined up, we're going to use a Sharpie to line out where we're going to cut it. Now if you go closest to the inner area of the door, we can mark it with the Sharpie, and this way we can cut it with our scissors. I flipped the camera around so you guys can see how I'm marking it on the opposite side of this paper. Once you have it close enough in length, we can just do a guess on where we need to cut it at on there. This way we can have enough length on this patch. Now remember, this is just a template. We're going to keep adding onto here. This is just the first beginning part of this shape. What our goal is, we're going to try to make this patch panel from one piece. This way we don't have to worry about so many areas welded on this area. Once you're done cutting this out, we're going to test it out and see if it's long enough to cover the area that we want. Now don't be afraid to trim back on your piece of paper or cardboard. This way we can keep getting it as close as we need to, so when we trace it on the piece of sheet metal, and the more accurate it is on that sheet metal, the less you have to worry about using a grinder or your shears to shape it. As you can see here, this is just the beginning part that we're trying to cut out. Now before you mark anything on the metal, make sure you're actually cutting out enough of the rust. This way you don't have to worry about it on the inside of the panel. The next step is going to be cutting out more paper. This way we can make this template as accurate as possible and try to make this patch all in one piece. Now this is how we're going to get all of these complex curves all scripted down on this template by using individual pieces of paper and some tape. We're going to use some blue tape to hold it together to keep that curve. This way we could see what we need to do and put on that piece of sheet metal. The next thing we have to do is remove the template, and we can trace it on that sheet metal. Now this is what we're going to be recreating basically with our sheet metal. Now what you're going to do is push this template down nice and flat, get all those curves out of the way. This way we can trace it and make sure we have enough material to make those shapes. I recommend using a Sharpie that you can see the color of. This way when you use your electric shears, we can cut it to that exact shape. Make sure you continue to keep pressing it down flat, and if there's any area that seems like there's a little bit missing, you can always draw a little extra on the piece of sheet metal and trim it once you get it on the door that you're repairing. Alright, we're going to use my electric shears and also my cutoff wheel to make sure we can get this panel out. Once you get your patch all traced out and cut out, we can then start shaping it into the shape that we need. What I do is I start marking the areas where those areas need those bends. As you can see, I'm making sure I'm making indentations and marks where I need to bend to make sure I don't go the wrong way. Now, if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I don't have too many fancy tools or anything else like that. I have a few good quality tools like my Miller welder and a few other things. I usually just use what I have around. And right now I'm using my vise and a few of my bodywork hammers, some dollies and stuff like that. We're going to be just taking our time and getting this as close as we can by hand. Now, the reason why I'm using my hands to bend this down right now is it keeps a consistent curve on there instead of creating sharp indentations in between. Then I'm following through with my hammer to create that edge I need. Now I'm at this point in the video where I would like to thank everybody for watching this far, and I would like you guys to remember to like and subscribe to my channel. My channel is geared towards all different types of videos in the automotive culture. But mostly I like to teach you guys what I'm learning, and you guys can watch from my mistakes and from my triumphs. And you can take whatever you want from there. So every like and subscription helps me grow my channel, and in turn helps me grow my tools, which will then help me grow my business. And as my business grows, I'll be bringing you better videos and everything else along with it. I'm at the point now where I'm basically almost done with the patch being shaped, but we still have to do a little bit more to make sure it can fit in there even better. Now we're going to cut it out and make sure we can put this patch in the area it needs to. Now this is in between where we are cutting out some stuff. We're still not done. We're going to keep trimming it away, and then we're going to grind it all. Now I'm going to treat this in 3 stages. The first one, we're going to use this disc and start grinding away any of the surface rust. Then we're going to use a wire wheel, and then we're going to put on a chemical converter, which is going to etch into that metal in about 30 minutes and make sure that all that is converted. And then we're going to spray on some primer. And then we're going to coat it with a single stage paint. Then we're going to put in that patch. some rust dissolver and let it sit for about 30 minutes to an hour. And then once we're done with that, we're going to wipe it off with some acetone and get ready for that primer. I'm brushing it in there with a little cheap nylon brush. This way I make sure I get in all those pores or any areas that the spray bottle doesn't let me get in. I recommend putting some of that gel into a metal container. That way you can use the brush easier with spreading it on. That way all you have to do is dunk it in and out really fast and you'll get more product on it. Now the next stage is we're going to be trimming back any of the areas that are a little too long for that patch. This way it can be a perfect butt splice. Now what you're going to do is leave a little gap between each one, and that will make it a butt weld. It doesn't have to be a perfectly straight line, but as you can see here, I'm still perfecting the edges a bit before I go and weld it. Here's a little piece of the metal that we cut out, and the rest of the metal is starting to turn to a perfect gray color as the acid is neutralizing any of the rust. What I'll be doing is putting on a second coat before I actually prime it. So after the acid sat for a second time, I cleaned it off and then I put on a coat of self-etch primer, let that dry, and I sprayed on a second coat after that. And then we're going to put on some enamel on that area. This way it's completely sealed, and then we're going to get ready to install that new patch. Once you check the fitment and see if your patch is what you want it to look like, we're going to get ready to start installing it. So we're going to go all the way around it with a series of spot welds. This way we don't warp the panel at all. Make sure you set your welder to the gauge wire and the gauge of the metal that you're welding. Now what I am doing with my air compressor is I'm blowing air after each spot weld to cool off that area rapidly to try and make sure I can minimize the chance of warping it. Take your time in between each spot weld, and you can also use your hand around it to make sure you could feel what the panel is getting to temperature wise, and if it gets too hot, make sure you stop. Now once you're done welding in your patch, we're going to start grinding away and flushing out those welds, making sure that we can then start filling and spraying some primer in those areas. Once you're done grinding those down, I sprayed some primer over those areas, which is the black primer, which you can see a little bit of that on those seams. Then I put some fiberglass long strand and short strand filler in those areas to make sure it's complete and completely waterproof. And I'm going to start blocking it down and shaping it, which I'm using some 40 grit to do that right now. Right now I am doing filler work on both sides of the door, getting it ready to be lined up. This way I can get the bodywork as close as I can. As you can see here, this is what the bottom of the door looks like now. It's still not completely done. This is what it looks like though in the rough bodywork stage. Alright, stay tuned for the rest of the work on this Wagoneer until it's fully restored. Thanks again guys, and we're going to see you in the next one.